Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining VistaView Solutions webinar. Today's Q&A Cafe is about organizational and work distribution rules in SAP Business ByDesign with your host, Laura Harkalow. My name is Catherine, and I'll be facilitating today. Just a reminder that we'll be recording this session, so everyone will remain on mute. And then, of course, the recording will be sent out within a couple of days. If, of course, you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the questions or the chat box window at any time, and we will answer them near the end of this presentation. And then, of course, don't forget to join us for next week's Q&A Cafe on Wednesday, February the 24th. That's going to be our project management series, the next installment. That's going to be order to cash project-based services in SAP Business ByDesign. You can find registration email information about that in our resources page on our website or in the email sent out next week. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Laura.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. All right. As the title says, it's going to be a party today. So we're going to go through party roles and work distribution. I kind of threw the party roles in there, even though it wasn't in the overview of the definition, but I thought it kind of led itself a little bit into some other sort of fun topic that you may or may not know about in Business ByDesign. So we're going to start with the work distribution rules, and then we'll end with the party role and kind of, as usual, go through a little bit of PowerPoint. For anybody that's on the call, if you want to download this presentation, it's in the handout section. So if there's things that you're wondering how to do after the fact, you can download it and kind of refer back to it. All right, let's get cooking. So the agenda, what is work distribution? And then we're just gonna describe kind of the two different ways that we can distribute work, or kind of default and assign different units, organizational units, or different people to different business documents in the system. And then we're going to go through the setup of both the organizational work distribution and then the employee work distribution. They're very similar, but the level of detail and the different types of documents that you can impact are different between the org unit and the employee. And then we'll see it in action. We'll go through a quick example of setting it up, and then we'll walk through the example and how it actually does all the things that we want it to do. And then we'll go through an example of defining a custom party role. So with that, work distribution, what is it? By default within ByDesign, when a work task is created, you guys are all ByDesign users, you know that there's tons and tons of tasks that get created automatically through the system when something doesn't happen that it's supposed to, or if something is escalated past a certain date, or if there's an issue. And so by default, those types of work tasks are able to be seen by all of the users that have access rights to that particular work. So as an example, in a lot of the work centers, you'll see like customer invoicing under the overview, there's a work section. So like in general ledger for the closing cockpit, there's a work, there's the general ledger work, supplier invoicing, there's work. So really, if anybody is assigned to the supplier invoicing work center, they'll be able to see everything. So it's sort of like a round robin. Anybody can pick them up and work on them and resolve that. So that's at its most generic. But for some of the business processes, we want an organizational unit or a specific employee to be determined for a particular work item. So as an example, in here I have defining the sales unit and or the employee responsible on a sales order. You know, some other examples are in opportunities, whether you know, who the person is that should get notified if an opportunity has stalled or has stopped. In contracts, who the default contract administrator is, things like that. So there's a lot of ways for us to define those the work distribution. And what this does, when I actually define something like an organizational unit, they'll then show up in reports like more particular to sales and service. If you're part of that organization, it shows up as part of like my organization, my team, my this, for some of the relative selects that are in the reports. So there are certain areas in ByDesign that can be controlled with the work distribution. So there's various parameters that are given by default. Some of them can be controlled and impacted. So in the again, more so the organizational work distribution rules are really very specific to purchasing, sales, and service, to allow you to have more centralized organizations. So basically, maybe if I, have a customer service center that is taking all of my sales orders, and they might need to give credit to a guy in the field, or there's somebody else that's responsible for that, or you're doing centralized purchasing, but you want that purchasing unit for a particular geography to be derived for the order. This is where the work distribution comes into play. So by default, without any work distribution rules, the system will automatically fill in the org or the employee to the relevant business document based on who's logged in. So if I'm in a sales order, it'll put me in, and then if I'm not assigned to a sales unit or a sales organization, I'll have to fill that stuff in manually. So you might find that in your system a lot, and it's kind of annoying where I have to fill in the company and the sales unit and the sales org and things like that. This gets you away from having to do all of that work. Once the system does assign the document, it puts it in a corresponding work list for you. And then in some cases, there'll be a BTM task. So business task management will be assigned to the employees belonging to the responsible org unit, or directly to the responsible employee, depending on what the work distribution type is. This isn't necessarily the same as when you're in fine tuning. There's all kinds of different configurations and fine tuning for business task management. These are sort of a separate type of topic. Another thing to note that is the employee work distribution is always configured independently of the organizational work distribution. So, and then it sort of waterfalls up the chain. So if I have at its most detailed level the employee, so again, going back to more of a sales or a service type example, if I'm a salesperson and I'm the person responsible for that particular account, it'll fill it in automatically, and then it will derive the sales unit that I belong to if I don't have an organizational work distribution assigned to that particular account or the employee responsible. So as I said, without any work distribution, the system will either default the data based on the user's org assignment, or it requires a manual entry. So this is kind of one of those things that it really helps alleviate a lot of the extra keying in and frustration that users might see when things aren't derived. And it also helps foolproof a lot of the reporting as well. So users don't have to kind of rekey in or have to know who the salesperson is responsible for particular accounts or things like that. It really just makes it a lot more streamlined. One thing to note though is that the work distribution doesn't dictate the access rights. So let's say I'm somebody that is assigned to more of the purchasing type tasks and the purchasing work center, supplier invoicing, things like that. But then for some reason I assign them as a person responsible to an account for a sales order. That doesn't then automatically give them access to that sales order. So in theory too, if you've got sales guys that maybe they're working in an external CRM tool like Salesforce or something like that, and they don't necessarily need to access ByDesign, you can assign them as people responsible for the sales orders and the accounts, but not necessarily give them access to the system, or have to give them access to the system. So the big key to success in a lot of this is going to be your organizational structure too. So this keys into a lot of different areas within the system of where people sit in the org structure, where they have, as well as things like the functions. So sales is a particular one that is pretty important. Sales and sales marketing, customer invoicing, those are kind of the big ones from an employee, and purchasing are the big ones from an employee access that you want to get those right and configure those appropriately on your organizational units to to one when you hire someone new into your organization, that the system will suggest the right unit, the right work centers that they need. But then this also kind of drives where the tasks get disseminated to. All right, so in order to configure the organizational work distribution, there's only one place to do it, and it's in organizational structure, organizational management. So within that work center, under the work distribution tab or work center view, there's organizational work distribution, pretty straightforward. Depending on the system scope, the following business areas can have the org distribution rules defined. So when you go in there, it's going to be filtered. If you don't have field service and repair or entitlements or things like that, you won't see service and support. Or if you don't have like fixed price services or things like that, if you're just doing more product-based deliveries and purchasing, you'll just see purchasing, sales, and marketing. And so, like I said, as I mentioned earlier, I would say it's a pretty critical step in your implementation or kind of going through when you do have the centralized functions, like a centralized purchasing department that you want to drive, maybe approval processes based on the purchasing unit or things like that, or from the sales side or service side, being able to disseminate tasks out to people, or give credit for sales orders or service orders to different sales organizations or different maybe sales regions or sales territories. So let's walk through an example in the system. So what we're going to do is we've got, for the sales unit determination, we've got a region. So we've got our West region. Let's just assume that all states in blue are attributed to sales Fresno, which exists in California, and that's our West region. And then the gray states are attributed to sales Canton, it's in Ohio, and that's in the East region. And that's these are our org units. So we've got S1122 and S1121. So let's hop into the system, and we will go ahead and I've already pre-configured it, and then I'll do one from scratch when we go back into the employee. But again, as you'll see, when I come into the organizational management under organizational work distribution, you'll see these different areas where I can group or ungroup them, and all I have, even though I have a fully scoped system, so everything is in play within my system. We only have about 12 different things that we can define from a organizational work distribution. So really, I focus a lot on the sales side and the service side to drive a lot of these things. So, like the sales unit for manual invoices is always a good one to configure if you do a lot of manual customer invoices. And then I'm typically working a lot within the sales unit for sales, so that will allow me to territorialize my organization. And the other thing to note, like when you do, as soon as you start assigning these types of things, they waterfall up. So if I do assign the sales unit for sales, it'll drive up and see where does it exist in the org. So which sales unit belongs to which sales org, and which sales org belongs to which company. So again, if you're used to always having to fill in the company to get everything to fall down into defaults, or if you're hard coding or assigning sales reps to the accounts, this is a good way to get away from that. So it's, when you have turnover, or if you frequently change your sales organizations or your sales territories, this is a great place to look. So if I go into select the sales unit for sales and I pop into here, we'll see I've got already two rules set up in the system, and you'll see within this area specifically for the organizational work distribution rules, you've got hard-coded classifications of what you can pick and choose. It's not like workflow rules where you can say based on this custom field, assign this, that, and the other. Within fine-tuning, put that in here. Within fine-tuning for sales and service, if you just type in criteria to determine responsibilities, you'll see that there's 4 different options, one for sales, one for service requests, one for service orders, and another one for service order processing. And so you can actually default. It really works out well on the service order side, because you can get down to a level of like what type of incident they're calling about, for what type of break fix, and you can start to assign different people automatically based on geography and specialty, or what type of problem that they're having. But you've got options in both of those areas to be very generic in nature, which is just sales unit by region. So all you'll see if you select that is company, country, city, state, zip, and those are the only options you'll see. I always by default change it to sales unit by region, account, ABC, and industry. It just gives you a lot more leverage to be able to assign different things a little bit more flexibly, if it's not really a geographical delineation only. So you might have 3 different sales teams, like that are responsible for different lines of business, but they all overlap different geographies. Here you can use the industry, and then even most specifically, you can put the responsibilities in for the accounts as well. And then at times, I've definitely been a pirate and reused the ABC classification, since we kind of all know that there's not really a lot of functionality that sits around the ABC classification for automation in the system. So sometimes I'll use that and reclassify those fields to give me some more flexibility when determining these types of rules. So as you start to create your rules, the one thing to note is that in this table, it goes just like most other decision tree tables in the system. It starts at the most specific. So if you've got account specific people, if you've got someone that's responsible, maybe it's an anomaly and you've got John assigned to the East region, but Mary needs to take account for these 3 accounts because they're large accounts and they need hand holding or something like that. I can make a specific rule and sit that above my more general type rule. And as soon as the system finds a match for that particular rule, it'll stop moving down the list. So always remember, most specific to least specific. And so you don't have to fill in all of these, all of the fields in here. So I don't have to start with company and then go to country instead. I can do any combination of them. However, if I have things that are specific to a particular country and then the state, I always choose the country, because these are waterfall fields. So if I just go straight to the state without picking a country, you'll have to go through every single country, the list of every single country and all their subsequent regions or states in the list, which is kind of a pain in the butt. So I try not to do that. So I'll just select that it's United States. And then, like I said, you can put in as many, all of them, any of them that you want. And then, like I said, this will then waterfall down to our states, and I've got all of my states on the west, in that west region are defined. And that's going to go to, like we said, it's going to go to Sales Fresno West for S112. And then I've got the same type of rule set up on the East region for my Sales Canton East. Pretty straightforward. These rules, again, can be copied, and if you need to then make things that are more specific down a little bit lower, I can add the rule. If I add a rule, it's going to go on to the bottom. If I insert a rule, it's going to pop it into the right below there. And then you always have the option to resequence, move things up and down in that priority. So you can very easily, kind of figure out which ones, because sometimes you might just go hog wild and creating a lot of rules and not really sure which one is more specific or less specific. And then even though you can delete, sometimes it's always it's a best practice sometimes to have validity dates on your rules. And this is also good, again, just like even the org chart, where you can say, as of or even the price lists or things like that. So rather than having someone pounding in new rules and new lists and stuff on December 31st and not enjoying New Year's Eve, to get it in for January 1st, we can say it's done on 12/31, and then it starts taking effect for new orders on 1/1. So you get that that capability to show your future work distributions. Right, perfect. So let's go and create a new sales order, and we'll see this bad boy in action. So we've got 2 accounts. So we've got our American Furniture Warehouse, which sits in Colorado. So we're hoping that if this works out right, you'll see that American Furniture Warehouse is going to go to the west, which it does, and it defines just Kate as our employer responsible. And I have just a global rule set up, and we'll see how we're going to change that. So keep that in mind, that we're going to then go ahead and change that Kate Jacob is no longer responsible for all the accounts in the US, and we're going to split them up between 2 new reps that we just hired. And then if I change the account to Amazon, which, spell it right, that exists in Delaware, that now will dynamically change to Sales Canton East, and then both of those organizations are going to sit under the Sales Pro organization, so that is not going to change. But if it did, it could change dynamically to either a different company or a different sales organization. And then if I have something that maybe, I didn't assign all of the country or all of the states in here to an organization, I've got Ashley that sits in Indiana, and then you'll see that by default, because me as Eddie Smoke, I sit in the sales heating organization, that's going to automatically default for me because it doesn't find a rule to fit within those categories. So that is going to be our organizational. And let's go then into, so I put in here, again, the setup, where you have to go for the fine tuning, and then you'll be able to do that on your own. And then the next piece is going to be the employee work distribution. So it's very much the same, but you've got a lot of other options in here. So there's not only purchasing, sales and marketing, service and support, but you also have finance and admin. So there's going to be a lot of things around like contract administration and things like that that will appear in the finance and admin, that you can define particular people to have the work sent to. And so again, same concept holds through, that it's really good if you do have centralized people, but you need to, because this ultimately, especially in sales, the sales units in most cases are going to impact, your profit centers and all your profitability reporting and the roll-ups and things like that. So sometimes, having it more standardized and systematized is going to lead to a lot less issues on the back end. So we're going to take sort of the same example and just turn it up a little bit. So as I showed you, we have Kate Jacob is defaulting to all of our orders because I just have her set up as the employee responsible for everybody in the US. But now we've just hired and brought on 2 new people, Kathy Jagger and Roberta Johnson, to lead the East and the West. So everybody in the West is going to be Kathy, and then everybody in the East are going to be Roberta. So the setup is exactly the same that we have. And then we will go in, we'll show that live, and then we'll look at kind of the account too, because there's also the way to assign that, to assign it manually if you don't have kind of the direct, if you don't have rules around who is assigned to what, then you can have just straight on employee work distribution defined at the account level. So the employee work distribution can be accessed from, again, the organizational chart, but you also have the option to access it from application and user management. So you'll see employee work distribution, same exact thing, just a different way to access it. Either way, it requires a advanced user license. So in the new licensing model, if you access the org chart or application user management, assumes that you're doing configuration and thinks you're an advanced user. So just to be aware of that if you're giving these, giving this permission out to people. So again, you'll see that you've got, approvers for payables, receivables, tax management. You've got a lot of things for alternative approvers for things. So these are set to different areas that you can have approval mechanisms set up, but not necessarily using the advanced workflow rules within application and user management. So we're going to go through sort of the same again, the same piece here where we've got the employee responsible for sales. And then again, if I kind of scroll down, you'll see sort of all the other different areas. So the different processors or service performers. So if you are using any of the service area type functions, this is really nice for being able to kind of automatically figure out who should be doing what. Let's go into the employee responsible for sales, and we're going to edit that. And so, like I said, anything in the country US, we've got set to Kate. So I'm just going to add a new rule in here, and then we can move that up. But I'm going to say, so the country is going to be the US. Like I said, I don't want to have to scroll through all of our lists, and then because that American Furniture Warehouse is in Colorado, rather than going through all those other lists, we'll just assume that these are all the guys in the West. And then we'll do another rule where we're going to say the country is the United States. And then Amazon's in Delaware, so we will say that it is in Delaware. All right, I'll pop that over. And so we're going to say the West is going to be Roberta. And then Kathy's going to be our gal in Delaware. All right. And then I'm just going to delete this rule here. All right, so now we can go back and actually see that in action, where we're now going to kind of enter a new sales order for those two areas again. So now we'll see kind of in concert how that works, where we're going to have the West region assigned as well as the right salesperson. So now rather than Kate Jacob assigned, Roberta is now the right person. And the other piece is that if you go into the actual account itself, you'll now see, even though you haven't hard coded or physically assigned the employee responsible in here, because there are two people that actually hit the same rule in that list, you've got the employee responsible as Kate and then Roberta. And you'll notice that it says like not a direct responsibility. That means that the system has assigned that to the account automatically. And you can always access that from the contacts screen within the responsibilities. Anything that's grayed out has been system assigned. And so, again, in an example where you might have 95% of your accounts fit nicely into a box of East and West, but 3 or 4 accounts have a special super duper sales guy that needs to be responsible for them, I can always overwrite that. Anything that goes manually into this table will overwrite and supersede any of your other rules that are assigned to the within that work distribution. Right, and then again, I can change this to Amazon, and dynamically that's going to change to East and Kathy. And then last, if I go back and change that to Ashley Furniture, it's going to default to Kate. And because I didn't have a rule set up for Indiana, Kate sits in sales heating. That's her homeworks or organizational unit. So that's again going to dynamically change back to the sales heating organization. All right, good. And if there's any questions, pop them into the chat at any point in time, and we'll stop in a little bit. We'll be done very soon. So there might be a time in the system outside of just, actually, let me see what kind of notes put that in there. We just talked about that. So there's also the capability to assign custom party roles. So going back to a sales type of example, within sales, you might have the person working on the deal, the sales manager. In case at VistaView, I'm also working on the deal as the solution consultant, doing the demos and stuff. So everybody gets a little piece of the pie when the deal gets sold, and you want to track that and be able to see other people that are interacting with the accounts. And so that can be assigned either at the business document level or at the master data level, and then default down to the business documents. All right, so ByDesign allows you to create custom party roles to assign, like I said, through rules, either directly to the account or directly in the sales itself. One thing to note, you can go through all this. Currently, there's no report which actually pulls the information out on the transaction level. You can get party role definition on the account itself, on the account master data, but it doesn't, you can't, there's no data source that pulls the party data on the transaction level. So if you download the file, then go into influence and vote on 244-316 to try to boost those numbers up, because I think it's a pretty critical thing, especially if you're in an organization that calculates commissions or things like that. It's really good to see that information in a report. So we're going to go ahead and go do the setup, and it's in business configuration and implementation projects. And then I can open my activity list. And this is under party role definition. And I can also create new parties in the accounts view as well. There's an option within the accounts fine-tuning activity to assign different party roles to the account, and I can create them off of that as well. But here, this is the easiest way to do that. So you've got your party role definition. And now let's say I want to assign a sales manager. So we'll put in sales manager. So now that we did our great job and Kate hired 2 new people to do the East and the West, so she hired Roberta and Kathy, we want to make Kate the new sales manager for all of our deals. And so in order for it to show up on the list, for me to actually create those different roles and responsibilities, I want to click that it's responsibility role. There's also 2 other options in here. One that it's contact relevant. So ByDesign allows you to actually keep these responsibilities at the contact level. If you want to get that detailed, you can have that available as well. So then it just shows up in the drop down to your contacts as well. And then a one-to-one assignment for business partners. So basically, if this guy shows up in, I can't assign multiple people to this particular role in the business document, or I can't have this guy show up in the business document multiple times. So I'll keep that one blank. Right. And I'm pretty sure that it's in accounts, and I'll pop into there and just to kind of show you that one as well, and the fine tuning of where you can also create this. All right, I think it's in accounts. And if this guy pops up, we will see that I'm pretty sure it's in here. It's no, it's not. I can't remember right off the top of my head where that is. I will find that and let you guys know. But let's go back into the organizational work distribution and the employee. And now there's the option within under sales to see the account responsibility by party role. And so let's say, you know, the state's going to be Colorado, and we're going to change that. It's going to now be Kate. She just got a promotion because she's pretty awesome. And she's the sales manager, so we will assign her the sales manager role. So this one is kind of a little it's a little less intuitive than this one's more in line with the distribution channel assignment. So where this, you would assume that party role is the filter. This is actually the assignment. So this first one, so that's just to keep kind of in mind that when you assign this one, that's what's going to pop into the account or the business document. All right, so again, if I go back into my account for American Furniture Warehouse, again, those guys are going to be in Colorado. I now see the sales manager as Kate Jacob that's assigned into that order. And then when I go back in and I start to create a sales order for that same account, again, we're going to get our Fancy Dancy West and Roberta. But then additionally, when we go into the extended view and our involved parties, we've got our different party roles. Oops, where did that go? Sorry, that should have shown up in there as the sales manager. I must have missed one little bit in there, but that would typically show up in as the sales manager on the involved parties screen. All right. Well, with that, everybody gets back about 20 minutes for the day, and hopefully you'll join Chris Hogan next week for the ongoing project management series for Business by Design. Lots to talk about in the project management area. So hope to see you guys next week. And I think the week after that, keep your antennas up. I think we're doing, I'm pretty sure, Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got the what's new. So I'll be doing highlighting all the cool things that are in the system, as well as maybe giving you a little taste test for some of the new features that I've been beta testing, like consignment and the new intelligent invoice scanning. So we'll pop into that as well. So hope you learned a little bit today, and thanks for joining us. Talk to you next week.
Yes, thanks so much. As Laura said, please make sure that you're with us next week for a project management series. And then, yes, as Laura had said again, the week following on March the 3rd, we are going over what's new with ByDesign. Thanks again so much for attending. I hope you have a lovely rest of your night.